Hey guys, and thank you for listening to the Campus Safety Voices podcast. My name is Amy Rock, and I am Senior Editor for Campus Safety. Each year, Campus Safety has a Director of the Year Awards program that recognizes K through 12, higher ed, and hospital police chiefs, security directors, emergency managers, or heads of security and/or public safety who demonstrate outstanding leadership skills, ingenuity, and selflessness. We name a winner from each sector at one of our campus safety conferences. The nomination materials we receive for each finalist are chock full of notable accomplishments. To give the finalists more deserved recognition, we like to chat with them further to highlight a few of their most impressive accomplishments or achievements they are especially proud of. One of the higher ed finalists is Ginger Walker, who is the Director of Emergency Management at the University of Houston. In our chat, Ginger talked about the campus's response through Winter Storm Uri, which significantly impacted much of the state, and also the school's response to Hurricane Nicholas, which hit the area just 7 months later. Ginger also spoke to the school's after-action reports and what her department learned, and new policies and procedures that were put in place as a result. Take a listen. Be sure to subscribe to Campus Safety's YouTube channel and like or leave a comment on our videos. Or subscribe to our Campus Safety Voices podcast on Apple and Spotify and leave a review. As the Director of Emergency Management at the University of Houston, you have had to handle issues that come with severe weather. But from my understanding, Houston severe weather is more like, hurricanes, tropical storms, flooding, and temperatures very rarely go below freezing. But in February of last year, that changed with Winter Storm Uri. And now I'm in Massachusetts, so we have the infrastructure in place to handle well below freezing temps. But I'm assuming that isn't the case for Texas, at least not in the Houston area. So can you just talk about the challenges that came with that winter storm and how your campus responded to keep students safe?
Sure. So I'd like to give you a little bit of background just to kind of give you a feel of what was happening. And as it was happening, we are not a stranger to severe weather, as you mentioned. We encounter all types of weather-related, warning-based type emergencies with regard to weather. And, specifically, like you mentioned, hurricanes and tropical storms, that's something that we're used to dealing with. However, winter weather is definitely something that we are not as well versed in. And I would say the state of Texas itself is not well, versed in that. Now, the places that are in the panhandle, absolutely, but down here in the South, not so much. So for us, this was in February of 2011. So we were still going through the pandemic. We're still going through it, but we were knee deep in that, working partially remotely. Some folks, those individuals that need to be on campus, those essential personnel, were working on campus. But, for the most part, a lot was happening remotely. For us in emergency management, anytime that we have an incoming event, let's say winter weather, we start monitoring. The National Weather Service will start sending us notifications, and we're part of that network. And we'll start monitoring and keeping an eye on it. The National Weather Service for Houston, Galveston area is quite large. So some of the areas that it monitors are upwards of 80, 90 miles away from the actual Houston area. So the area is quite large, and it's difficult to hone in on specific areas. However, they are very good about giving us information specifically about Houston. But since this was a statewide event, it was very difficult to pinpoint where some of those things might happen. This one was pretty sure that it was going to impact everyone, the state as a whole. So that becomes a problem. When you rely on your state resources, that becomes a problem. So this Arctic air mass came through. And as I mentioned, it was forecast, but we weren't exactly sure how those impacts were going to impact the University of Houston. As we started to monitor a little closely, we would let our leadership know what was going on and sharing with them. As things became a little bit more serious, the university decided to go remote. They decided, I think we're just going to go remote. And then as things progressed, they decided to actually close due to the types of emergencies that were not just happening on the campus, but they were happening with everyone in the surrounding area. And at that point, we start making notifications to ride-out teams and our emergency operations center liaisons. So ride-out teams are those groups that stay on campus during an emergency. I will note that a lot of our ride-out teams chose not to activate because we didn't see this as being as impactful as it was. And you can't always predict. You have to sometimes just weigh all those options and decide. So we were able to work with the ride-out teams remotely and also the EOC liaisons. Now that's a larger group of departments all over campus that assist the Emergency Operations Center with information, data, what's happening in their area, what they're seeing with either students, faculty, or staff. We want to make sure we have eyes on everything. So after we closed at that point, things started to get a little bit more serious on campus. We started to see some of our critical infrastructure, being impacted from leaks, pipes were bursting. We were seeing water coming through as the temperatures were a little bit warmer inside the buildings. And as you know, the state of Texas had some quite significant impacts to their infrastructure with regard to power outages, impacting people's ability to, run their heating systems. Their electricity was off, water, heat, transportation, everything was shut down. And this is a statewide. We're used to this in the Houston area when we have a hurricane like Harvey, where things are shut down. But this was the state. And so the state being shut down really limited resources from things like water, things you don't really realize are going to impact you. Water is vital. When you don't have your bottled water, things get a little bit more of a challenge. Also, the use of toilets. We needed porta potties. We needed to be able to have folks use their facilities. And also for us specifically, some of the challenges that we faced here on campus were that we were starting to get reports in the EOC of those isolated power outages, and our HVAC system that controls the temperatures started impacting our computing center. So the computing center actually had to shut down for a period of time so that they could actually build it back. That computing center not only impacts the folks on campus, but it impacts those who are working remotely. And so that's a problem. And that became an issue for multiple reasons. One, resources coming in to help with the computing center, but also the ability to keep the computing center at the proper temperatures. And that took a bit. Another concern that we had was with our housing, student housing, making sure that our students are okay. It's a priority for us that when we have any type of emergency, our first area that we look at to ensure that they are going to be safe and secure is our students who are on campus. And the residential life folks did a great job working with the students. And also another area is our animal care facility. A lot of universities do have animal care facilities, and those fall into our life category for students and for animals. And then, as I mentioned, the leaks started to increase, and those power outages statewide began to become more of a problem. There were becoming more and more and more. And for us in the Emergency Operations Center, we are able to really use our EOC liaisons and our write-out team members to receive situation reports so that we can pull together a full situation report for leadership. It's been very helpful to us because we can't, in an EOC, you can't see what's happening out there. You only get what is coming into you in the Emergency Operations Center. So when they send in those situation reports, you have a great overall awareness of what's happening. And in turn, you're able to share an overall awareness with leadership. They need to know these things. It's easier for them to get an overall situation report to find out what's happening on campus without having to make 6, 10, 18 calls or having folks call them or going online and trying to go into, we use a system called VOC to read through those. We don't want leadership to have to worry about doing those. We just want them to get down to the skinny of it and find out exactly what it is they need to know so they can share it with the president. And that's important to us. They've got a million other things that they need to do. And worrying about these, we want to make sure we're doing the worrying for them and we can just provide them with the details. Another thing that we're able to do and coordinate through the Emergency Operations Center is our building assessments. We use this system, VOC, and it provides a mapping tool that we can click on specific buildings and provide content about what's happening within that building, whether there are leaks or no leaks, whether that building is clear for folks to go into, or if the building needs to be closed for a period of time, or maybe it's partially open. So it's been a great tool for us. And, we give that access to that system to lots of individuals on campus who need it and are aware. But that's kind of a very brief overview of everything. It went on for a long time. And that's one of those things where you just are kind of doing everything you can piece by piece to get to, a good space.
Yeah, I was thinking in a statewide incident where resources are spread thin, like you were saying, I imagine in a lot of ways, universities are better off than a lot of other entities since, you have your own emergency teams and access to, goods and things like that. So I feel, yeah.
That's exactly right. And, in addition to that, we have the write-out teams. We also have EOC liaisons, and we also have a CERT team, which is the Community Emergency Response Team, where we have members all over campus that have been trained, including students that know what those vital emergency type responses need to be. And they're able to do what they need to do. We provide tons of training between ourselves, the fire marshal's office, environmental health, facilities, the police department. All of us together provide lots of resources and training for the university, and we target often the students so that they're able to provide for themselves. But you're absolutely right. We do have food. We do have water up to a point. We do have resources that maybe the average citizen at home may not have.
I was going to ask you actually about the animals part too, if you had an agricultural program, because there was a show that I watched. It was an animal rescue, and I think they were based in Houston. Actually, it was somewhere in Texas, and it was just interesting. You think of people being affected mostly, but then seeing that aspect of it, and this place didn't have the fanciest barns and things like that, and they just had to kind of wing it. And this woman had like horses in her kitchen and insane things that they had to do.
It's true. For us, our animal care facility is very well run for lots of reasons. One, they have an emergency action plan, but they also have an extremely robust continuity of operations plan. And we also head up the continuity of operations planning program for the university, but they are able to transport the animals from one area of campus to another area of campus. Not only do they have a plan for that, they practice the plan, they've utilized the plan, they've put it in place. So they have multiple locations around campus that they can move the animals to and do it quickly. So it's very interesting and very intricate. We have a very close relationship with the animal care facility on campus, and so it works very smoothly.
And I guess one upside to going through something like this is just being better prepared for it if it's to happens again. And in your nomination for Director of the Year, I saw that you also created after action report following the storm. Can you elaborate on those findings a little bit?
Sure, absolutely. So our office does after action reporting for all types of things, not just this event that we were speaking about, Uri, but also for major emergencies like, for example, Harvey, Ike, all types of Nicholas, for example. But we also do it for special events or generic events on campus and incidents. So we may have a spill or some kind of hazardous release that could occur, either it's off campus or on campus, and we do after action for those as well. So if there's an after action report needed, we do that. And as you know, after action reports involve everyone who was impacted, but we also involve those parties that may have had a very strong vested interest in how the incident was run, but also the areas of improvement so that they can work towards making it better. So for us specifically, I thought it might be a little bit to kind of give you an idea of some of the strengths. I always like to mention the strengths because those are always the good things. People need to know you did a great job, and they need to be encouraged. So for us on our campus, the campus coordination and the communication was excellent during this. And be mindful of the fact that we were still going through COVID, and individuals were still working from home, and that presents its own challenges. But the ability for us to coordinate and communicate well during an emergency and also be remote, to me, is amazing. It's just out of this world. So it means that we're all doing the right things. And I also attribute a lot of that to our implementation of the VOC system, which is our incident management system. So I attribute that because it's an overall awareness, and it gives everyone a place to go and see what's happening right now. But then again, you can always scroll and find out what's been going on. Also, our relationship with the EOC liaisons, they were active in the system, and they were active with their own departments in terms of putting information in. So that was extremely helpful because then we really know what's happening. And then so the write-out teams that did activate, they were very active as well in terms of the situation reports that I mentioned earlier. Those are extremely helpful to us, and they give us an overall awareness. We were able to also coordinate bottled water. That became a very big problem, not just for us, but it was a state problem. So we were able to coordinate lots of water from our dining areas and other areas where we were to bring the water in so that we could provide it to our students. That was large. We also have an emergency contract with a company that brings in, they come in and will bring any kind of supplies that you need, but they'll also come in and do repairs as well as mediation or mitigation strategies to help us kind of get through until we're ready to, start repairs. They stepped in and were able to help us as well. And I'll mention an area of improvement in a minute with regard to water, but we also created what we call our redundant channels. Several years ago, we were challenged with only using certain things for channels to communicate. We were able to reach outside of that box and create a system of redundant channels that allow us to communicate no matter what. Because sometimes those channels, as we know, get blocked. You're making phone calls, cell towers aren't working. You're trying to text, not working. But so we were able to create additional redundant channels so that we can all communicate, whether it's via radio or through VOC or other channels. Also, some additional strengths were our communication with the National Weather Service. We have a very, very strong partnership with them. We are very active in the NWS chat, as well as just a strong relationship with all the meteorologists in the National Weather Service for the Houston-Galveston area. And we also participate in our regional JIC calls, our Joint Information Center for the region, which is housed with Harris County. And we were able to participate in those, as well as provide any updates of what's happening with us. They want to know what's happening for us, but we also want to hear what the county judge is planning to do or what the county is looking towards doing, which has been very helpful. And I can't move forward with anything in the Emergency Operations Center without giving strong emphasis to the leadership of the University of Houston. They are so supportive, and their approach to handling emergencies has been outstanding. And being able to support us and provide us with the tools that we need has been vital, because then, as I mentioned before, being able to share situation reports with them, that's what they need. They need that high level information, but they are so supportive and ready to jump in and do whatever's needed to help us. So kind of moving into areas of improvement. We had a lot of our ride-out teams that chose not to activate. That was a little bit of a challenge because we never really know, should we activate or not know? The triggers are difficult because when you set a trigger, it may not necessarily meet that specific type of emergency, or let's say storm, for example. So it's difficult to set triggers. I know it would be ideal to do so, but that's very difficult. And a lot of ride-out teams did not activate, which once it's done, you can't get here. You know, the roadways were not safe for travel, so they were unable to get here. But it did pose some challenges, and it made a lot of ride-out teams rethink, you know, their process for activating. Also, many areas of campus that we learned from facilities had some insulation issues. So that's something that was immediately taken care of and repaired, which is great. Our key contacts too were a little rusty, and that always happens, you know, during an emergency. You realize, okay, I'm not sure we have all the key people in here, and so those were some important things.
Well, and sorry to interrupt you, especially during a pandemic, everyone's dealing with so many more additional challenges, so that just compounds that as well.
Exactly right, because we're used to, during the pandemic, like getting on your Skype or getting on a chat of some kind to communicate with each other. We kind of have to go back old school when we have an emergency like this, because those channels may not be working, you know, your internet may not be working. So you need to go back to the way you had done it before. And it was just a reminder to everyone that don't let those things get too rusty, because you may need them again. Also, you know, some things that have come up too for us are the ability to store items. For example, storing of water. You know, water goes bad, believe it or not. I know it's hard to believe, but water goes bad. So those things need to be, we need to have a process to, you know, move those out and move the new in. We also need a location for water. You would not believe how much space water takes. You wouldn't, nowadays, you know, you wouldn't believe how much water people consume. So it's a challenge, let's say, to, you know, where are you going to store it and how are you going to get it to the various locations all over campus? You've got, you know, 100 buildings that you need to move around. So those are a challenge. But also during this event, this entire state was getting resources and needing various supplies, from plumbing supplies to construction supplies, and those were in short supply. So when the university went to try and make those repairs, those supplies were not available. Now, that's something that our facilities department immediately acted on post Uri, and they have a stockpile of those supplies that are needed to make repairs. And I think that was amazing to do that because you don't know you're going to need it till you need it. And it always seems like, well, should we do it? But that mitigation strategy and really going through that risk assessment and making a determination of, if I don't do it, it's going to cost me way more than if I just go ahead and get these supplies and store them away. Maybe inconvenient, but we're going to be saving money. And that's the idea here, you know. Just a few other things were, you know, the UH substation, it did have power. However, some of the buildings are not on the UH substation, so those buildings didn't have power, and that can be a problem. So we have our own, but we do have a few that are on the cities, and the city, as you know, was being strained extensively. And then this ability to contact contractors. You know, the emergency contract was available to us, but they were having trouble with the needed supplies also. They're very responsive, but you can only do what you can do. And that's just kind of in a nutshell some of the larger challenges.
That made me think too of staffing shortages in general everywhere in the last couple of years, just making everything so much more difficult.
And during Uri, I would say, you know, things were still very stable with regard to staffing. So we were very lucky in that sense that the University of Houston does very well with its staffing. And we rely so heavily on facilities, and they do a great job of making sure that we have all the staff we need for, especially for emergencies.
Awesome. Well, as if COVID and then a winter storm weren't enough, your nomination said 7 months later, you guys are hit by Hurricane Nicholas. Were there any new policies or procedures put in place following the winter storm that kind of helped improve your response to this severe weather that the area is, you know, a little bit more experienced with?
Yeah, sure. So, you know, kind of with that, you have to back up a little bit because, you know, this campus is so unique in that anytime we experience something severe like a major hurricane or a tropical storm, this university is very self-sufficient, and they go in there and they do everything they can to make sure whatever those areas of improvement that went wrong with that particular emergency are fixed, so that the next time we don't encounter that. And I say that because it's important to us. For example, during Tropical Storm Allison, the major issue was generators. This university went out of its way to work very hard to ensure that almost all of our buildings have generators. And those generators aren't in basements. You know, they're in locations where they can be used during an emergency. Then you fast forward a little bit to Harvey, same kind of situation. That pre-planning that was needed, they went forward and did all of that to ensure that we were prepared for Harvey. I mean, you can't ever be fully prepared for an emergency quite like Harvey, but you can do absolutely everything you can and in your power, as well as this university has a very robust continuity of operations planning program, and that program actually was vital during Harvey. And I say that because it moves us into Uri and also Nicholas. So with Nicholas itself, you know, we were still going through the pandemic, and you know, we, as you said, we just experienced Uri, but during the pandemic, you know, let's say Nicholas is coming, it's coming this way, but we're still dealing with our daily operations and our daily case management for COVID. We're, you know, assessing what's happening. We're still assessing positive cases and handling those positive cases and doing the case reporting and contact tracing. All of these things are still going on. They didn't stop because Nicholas was on the way. And I say that because it just shows the, you know, how strong the campus is. But some of the policies and procedures, I wouldn't say necessarily policies, but I probably sort of go more in the procedure or process. for us is that the damage assessments are very quick. They start almost immediately on the second that the campus is safe for travel. So those damage assessments start right away. The damage assessment process also was implemented at the system level. So the University of Houston system has 4 campuses in it. So it was implemented for the system itself, which is very nice. A lot of those other campuses were able to utilize the program that we've instituted to do those damage assessments. And then the buildings were able to assess the capabilities and quickly with regard to generator and power restoration. We're able to check those things very, very quickly, and I attribute that to facilities. Also, with the damage assessments, we were able to use VOC's mapping tool, which is what we use. And I mentioned it a few minutes ago about that tool and being able to click on a specific building and it tells you exactly what's going on. It also color codes the buildings to let you know if they're clear for entry. So let's say green means this building has been checked and it's cleared for everyone to enter, which is great. And those resources, the police department, fire marshal's office, environmental health can use what's being done by facilities and put in that mapping tool to know whether or not they can enter the area. And then again, leadership. They're vital to the success. And if it's not for them and their leadership and their ability to respond quickly, it's been vital for us. And quite a few of the individuals that are on one of these specific leadership teams have been here through many storms. So that's given them even more experience to be able to help us with hurricanes specifically. And then again, our relationship with the National Weather Service, it grows every time. But during Nicholas, it kind of gave us that extra push. We had a strong relationship with them during Uri and being able to find out what's happening and what's happening specifically with our area. They have specific data that they provide to us with regard to temperatures, wind chills, all those things which they gave us. But that same information they provide to us during hurricanes as well. And so they're providing more and more and more tools for us every time we have an emergency. There's another tool that helps us and put it in our wheelhouse. Also the heightened awareness. Unfortunately, we just had an emergency, so everybody's awareness was a little bit more heightened, but it is one of those things that if your awareness is a little more heightened, you're more apt to actually get yourself really prepared. And I believe that the university was even more prepared. Then also, we were able to use some of those best practices from Harvey, which helped us too. Hurricanes have a lot of similarities in their impacts to the university that are a little different from the winter weather. However, things like generators and whether or not you're going to heat or air condition a facility, those things are the same. Also, move quickly and easily really makes a difference for us on our campus. And then, simple things like dining. People need to eat. So the dining area was vital for not just dining, but they also provide a lot of bottled water for us. And they help not only the students, but they also help the ride-out teams by providing them with some food too.
I was going to mention, you were saying your relationship with the weather service. I'm assuming it's also, a mutually beneficial relationship because they have access to research, obviously, but I would think that maybe as a university you do. I mean, I'm not sure if you specifically have a meteorology program, but.
You're absolutely correct. However, we don't go too much into the higher ed side of meteorology for our providing resources to them, but they do have lots of programs. The National Weather Service for Houston Galveston have a lot of resources, and they have a lot of programs where they want feedback. So as soon as a storm is over or an incident like Uri, they will want feedback immediately, and they want to know where the tornadoes hit, or who had damage, or where the flooding was, and where exactly it is, because that gives them more and more information to help them. The hydrologist, they need to know where were those areas that really received the most amount of rain. And we don't always know that one area of town was significantly impacted over another until that comes through. And we are very much involved with them after an incident too. And video, pictures, they like to receive those things as well, just to get a feel for what we really are dealing with.
And I think through our conversation, I can see why, but on your nomination, it says for several years that you've been recognized, as an expert in continuity of operations planning by the state of Texas. And in February 2021, the State Office of Risk Management recognized your continuity of operations planning efforts. Can you just speak to this a little bit?
Sure. So I have been lucky enough to run the continuity of operations planning program since its inception here on campus. So I love the program. Continuity can be a little bit of a difficult task to have folks complete, because they feel like, oh, it's more paperwork. But in the end, I try to show them that this is vital to their, to their program itself, and not just for an emergency. It's good for their daily ops. You don't know when you personally may not be available. And if you're not available, there may not be an emergency going on, but there may be other things that are happening that pull you out of your program. And if they pull you out of your program, other people need to step right on in and, act as though you were not there. And for the state of Texas, I have worked for several years with the State Office of Risk Management's Continuity Council. And that Continuity Council is a group of continuity planners from all over the state. And they are trained, FEMA trained as continuity practitioners. And we get together and discuss various things that we're challenged with regard to continuity planning. I think a continuity template is something that's difficult to develop. However, we did develop one here. We've been able to develop a program where departments complete a department continuity of operations plan, and then the divisions and colleges above those departments also complete a plan using the content from the department plans. And then all of that information is used to help us with the university's continuity of operations plan, which is turned into the state of Texas. And during multiple storms, and in this case, Uri, that group has, the State Office of Risk Management has mentioned our program in their settings multiple times, and recognized us for being able to be resilient, and our operations are able to resume quickly as if there was no interruption at all. For us specifically, I would say that the continuity plans have been used in every storm. And we remind folks when we send out notifications that, we're closing, or that, there's a storm approaching, start to get prepared. We remind individuals, check those continuity of operations plans, because those plans offer things like, who's going to be in charge, who we need to call. They need to call each other. How are you going to communicate with each other? How are you going to resume normal operations? What are those various mitigation strategies for your areas, those vital things that you need? And who's essential? We share the essential functions for the university in those templates so that they are able to quickly and easily know, am I essential or not? And then they know for sure. We have upwards of over 200 department continuity of operations plans. And then we have over 25 college division level plans, and then obviously we have one UH plan. That's the big one. But our entire program involves the creation of the templates that is on our website, and it's easily accessible for them, because you don't want to provide a program to everyone that's difficult. If it's difficult, you won't get any help and you won't get any buy-in. Also, we provide to them who's essential and non-essential. We try to provide that very clearly to them. We also have an assessment for handling critical interruptions. So if there's an interruption on campus, we provide a process within the template that talks them through those various things. For example, like I'm without power, or I'm without internet, or I'm without my phone, those kinds of things. How many days out can you be without that? How many days out can I be without power for my department? And if it's like 11 days, then you're not essential. But if it's 5 seconds, then like the police department, they can't be without it. They need to be running on these things at all times. So also we were able to share our after action reports with the State Office of Risk Management. And within the sharing of those plans, those after action reports, it did state clearly that everyone was using their continuity of operations plans. And that, I think, was vital, that all the departments were able to have that plan with them, taking it home with them, and being able to access it. So, if the dean's not available, who is the next person that you need to call to find out what's happening with your department or what's happening within your building, and then also, what are the expectations of that college for you whenever, there's an emergency? Individuals tend to not think about these things before, or, in daily ops, in a clear sky day, they don't think about it. But when there's an emergency coming, they think, oh gosh, well, we want them to be able to use the continuity plan to go right in, and they have the answers that they need so they can continue operations. And we were able to share that with the State Office of Risk Management. And then I was able to conduct a presentation, which was sort of a presentation, but also a training on how you can build a continuity of operations planning program from the ground up, which is how we did it here at the University of Houston. And that's where they had acknowledged our program.
Awesome. I feel like it's clear that establishing relationships with other groups and entities is so necessary for, continuity of operations and emergency response. You can't do it all on your own. National Weather Service can't do it on our own. State emergency managers can't do it on their own. So just developing those relationships is so important.
Right. I'm not a meteorologist, I'm not a meteorologist. And, I don't have any experience when it comes to, I'm not a police officer. Those things I have to be able to coordinate effectively with these areas, whether they're on campus personnel or entities that are off campus, other agencies, as you mentioned. I have to be able to do that, communicate and coordinate with them. And I find that for emergency management, that is key. You can have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't effectively coordinate an event, it has a real rough go.
Yeah, and communicating, your not necessarily weaknesses, but what you're not, completely well versed in is just as important, as communicating what you can do. Because if you just need to just be straightforward with people in your capabilities to be successful.
Yeah, exactly. Absolutely.
And I feel like continuity of operations is just so important, because universities are businesses, right? And students and parents are paying more and more attention to school safety and security more than ever. So if you don't put in the work, you're risking losing customers essentially.
Right, exactly. And I think we've reminded many of our researchers too that they can use their continuity plan for grant applications. They can use it for promoting their programs. I mean, if you share with federal agencies that you have a continuity plan, they're more apt to say, oh, you're going to do everything in your power to maintain operations at all times. And we want that. You know, we're losing money if we are not maintaining those critical programs or practices or research or, just day-to-day ops. If we don't do that, then we're really not doing what we need to do. And all of those critical infrastructure items are needed to take care of our priority, which is the students.